enjoyable conversation. Hopefully we'll continue that here. Today is the fourth and last of our Wellness Diwaniya. We are today focusing on mental wellness and education. I'm very happy today. With me is Dr. Maryam Al-Bahar, who will be explaining more what she does and how mental wellness is important from a very early age. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you're Kuwait's first child specialist.
Yeah.
Can you explain more what a child specialist does?
Sure. So child life specialists are well versed in child development, and we use that understanding of child development to help children and young adults through some of life's more challenging moments. And most of that happens in healthcare settings. So we work with infants, children, adolescents, and young adults that are going through acute illnesses, long-term illnesses, progressive, terminal illnesses. And we try to make sure that their development continues while they're in hospital, and we make sure that they're coping in a healthy way. And we try to give them the tools to develop a resiliency that then transfers into their regular life and into adulthood. And we also support the families through that.
So what inspired you to go into that field?
I always say that the job chose me. I was in between jobs and I was looking for something to do. I've been volunteering for a while in child life, and they asked me to join the team while I was looking for a job, and I said I'd do this for a year maximum. And that year turned into almost 7 years, and it's been a very enjoyable experience. We do so much to help families and children, and I have never experienced a more rewarding job, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Why specifically in hospital settings?
So that's the most, I would say, stressful, threatening setting for any adult and child. And so it's a very scary experience. Some will experience pain, they'll experience invasive procedures, threatening staff members. You know, they start to associate what staff wear with pain. And so now a lot of modern hospitals, the nurses won't even wear white anymore. Doctors have ditched the lab coat because infants have now recognized that white equals pain, infants. And so there's so much that we can do in a hospital setting to make sure that children don't experience as much stress, and then to make sure that that experience doesn't turn into a lifelong, you know, you still have adults that are scared of needles. I've seen a grown man, this huge man, being held down just to get a blood draw. Ridiculous. That shouldn't happen, you know? Just a simple intervention could help this man understand when he was a kid that this is a normal experience and that will help him get through it. And then he would have not had that fear of needles, you know? So, yeah.
That seems like something behavioral science would do. So, how do you educate children about that journey? So, how do you start? How long does it take? As a mother, I know going in to get a procedure, I really don't want to sit and give a lecture to my child.
So I always recommend that it depends on the age of the child. So if the child is 3 years old, start prepping them 3 days before they go into the hospital. If the child is 5 years old, 5 days before the hospital, and so on. And so you want to start to familiarize them with the hospital environment and normalize the hospital environment. And so that means reading books about the hospital experience, you know, storybooks. It means watching videos of Doc McStuffin or whatever is age appropriate about the hospital. We do medical play, which means we get like syringes without the needle, gauze, face masks, and then we make art activities with them. And so the child is manipulating these medical tools and understanding that they're not threatening, instead of seeing them for the first time in a hospital and associating that with scary, invasive procedures. And then we look at, so each stage has different, I guess, elements. For infants, we can't really prep them for anything, but we can support them through any hard points or stress points. And so, for example, let's say an infant is going into the hospital. We have to make sure that the infant isn't being too stimulated and isn't being unstimulated. So something in between, too stimulated by the lights, by the sounds of machines, by nurses coming in and talking over the child. The child can't regulate, the infant can't regulate themselves, and they can't tune out that sensory information. And then at the same time, a hospital room is white, it's empty, it's devoid of the warmth of family and interaction, and so we want to make sure that we encourage holding the child. We want to put some stickers, colorful stickers, or something that would engage the child physically, touch, sense of smell, all those things. And then a lot of people don't know this, but there's ways to help infants feel less pain when you're drawing their blood or giving them a vaccine. And so oral sucrose, it's basically glucose, and the infant can suckle it with the pacifier, and it's been shown to blunt feelings of pain. And so why aren't we using this in the hospitals, right? And then they're like, but infants will forget. They haven't the capacity to process where they are and what's happening, but they will remember how they feel. And that stress will translate later in life, even though we don't understand exactly how. So that's something we can do with infants. With preschoolers have amazing imagination. They will say, I got sick because a unicorn bit me, and then it flew over the rainbow, and so I had to go to the hospital, and then mama got mad, and so she gave me an injection. And I'm like, it's amazing how creative they are. And so for us, the important thing is to talk to them about that, and then correct those misconceptions. So ways you can talk to a preschooler is letting them know they're going to the doctor, reading a story with them, and then you can ask questions like, what do you think is going to happen when we go to the doctor? And based on what they reply, you can, correct those misconceptions, and then you can play with a doll and be like, this doll needs an injection, what do you think? And then he'll get the needle and poke the bear in the eye, and you're going to be like, no, that's not exactly what happens, you get it like on your arm or in your leg. And so you kind of fix that through play, that misconception. And it really supports the child, because now the child knows that what's going to happen isn't so threatening, and that the mom and dad are going to be there for them. Like for instance, we have a lot of kids come in for anesthesia and they're crying their hearts out, and they have this weird mask on their faces, and they fall asleep crying, and then they wake up crying because they will wake up like nothing ever happened. So one way we do this is we tell the parents, get a mask, and then let them play with the bear with that mask and talk about that mask and the magic air that flows into that mask. And then by the time the kid comes into the surgery room and has that anesthesia mask, they're so comfortable with that mask. And so they fall asleep with the parent there, they wake up, they're not upset. So there are like concrete interventions you can do with every age group. For school-age children, it's communicating with them. They want to know that they're going to be safe. They want to know that they're not going to miss out on school, because school is really important at that age, and they don't want to feel inferior to their peers. So part of our job is during this time, we connect the child to their school, and we make sure that the homeworks, there's a little bit of space where they can do the homework. They will make up any lost tests. And then we do a school re-entry support, which is we go to the school, we can talk to the children, especially if the child has burns or something that other kids can see, and he might feel like conscious about. So we can go there and prep the students for what they might see. And so that's how we can support school-age children. And for adolescents, that's the tricky part, because what adolescents want is independence. The last people they want to rely on are their parents. But during a healthcare intervention, the parent is going to be there. The parent is the one who's going to be holding their hand. And so it's this struggle with adolescents, and they'd rather depend on their peers or anyone else other than their parents at that point. And so we kind of develop a relationship with the adolescent. We pair them with other adolescents their age and communicate with their peer groups. And then we try to include the adolescent in the meetings with the doctor. So they are there every step of the way. they feel that independence and that control over their bodies. They make the choices with the parents. And so that way the adolescent is more likely to cooperate. They're more likely to take their meds on time and listen to like any dietary requirements. Because otherwise, you know, adolescents, they want to do their own thing. They're risk takers. They can't see how their decisions now are going to impact their future. And so it's a very delicate process. And I think simple interventions can make it so much simple for everyone.
I want to share a few scenarios.
Okay, sure.
And you tell me. So I'm looking at it between a parent, a specialist, and then a doctor who's trying to do a procedure.
Okay.
Sometimes kids have been restrained to get a procedure done.
Okay.
Because the child is wailing, they don't know what's going on, they're scared, obviously.
Okay.
But this is an emergency.
Yeah.
So something needs to be done. There are situations when I've been asked to leave the room because there's a lot going on. Maybe they don't want me to see the procedure and have a reaction.
Yeah.
When is it okay and when is it not? Because I love what you're saying.
Yeah.
But again, as a parent,
Yeah.
having sick kids, and I just want it to be done with because I just want to go home.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for too long, and I'm not going to sit there and explain to them you're going to be having, like, it's not going to hurt, and it's like, just do it.
So this is an emergency situation.
Not necessarily always. It's not like life or death.
No, but
If it's a cut that needs to be
last minute,
stitched.
yeah.
You
So
know.
I once had a 3-year-old who had a cut to her skull, and she needed, I think, about 4 staples to the skull. So a 3-year-old girl,
Yeah.
4 staples to the skull. She did it, no crying, no wailing, no struggling. She just sat there while we worked with her, because the emergence, we had to work quickly with her, but we did a quick education, quick distraction, normalization. We did everything in a condensed amount of time, and it worked for this kid. And so we were able to administer the 4 staples to the head, and she coped beautifully. So I know in that moment as a parent, you're probably worried and you're tired and you feel helpless. And that's where we step in. We take that load off of you. We build that relationship with the child so that they can trust us. And you're there every step of the way. We always advocate for the parent to be in the room. I know in Kuwait, the policy sometimes, especially when it's a blood draw, they kind of kick the parents out because the child is crying and then the parent gets upset. But we believe that the parent being in the room offers such comfort to the patient, and that their role in supporting their child is so important that we always advocate for the parent to go in. And we're there to support you through those big emotions and those big challenges. So that's why we advocate for more child life specialists to be in hospitals in Kuwait. They're available all around the world. It's just we're trying to build a presence here in the Middle East.
How do you feel that translates into, so you said about growing up and being scared of needles or being scared of any hospital kind of procedure, but can it also translate into mental issues such as having anxiety in general or irrational fears generally?
For sure, irrational fears. I have one of my cousins, her sister passed away when she was a toddler. This cousin can't go into a hospital without starting to feel faint from the smell of the hospital. So this is a toddler who shouldn't remember what happened, and just the smell can make her faint. That's trauma. That's unresolved trauma. And so even in acute cases, and by acute I mean pneumonia and the child is in for a day or 2 or 3, there's such a adjustment period when the child leaves the hospital and goes home that it can cause a period of time where the child might struggle academically, can display behavioral issues at home, and they're like, this is not my child. The child is trying to process what happened to them in the hospital and regulate themselves and go back to the way things were, but now he has these unresolved fears and experiences. And so we have to support children. Some of these resolve by themselves in like a week or 2, But there are some unresolved experiences that children have, and so that's where professionals need to come in and support.
So how important is it to incorporate some kind of play into resolving an issue such as a hospital or any kind of traumatic event?
It's easier to use play to help the child understand and build that resiliency than it is to use play to solve an issue. الوقاية خير من العلاج. So most of the time when I get calls from parents who didn't introduce the idea of the hospital through play and then now want to kind of help with the emotional issues that have happened because of the hospitalization. Start before. That's how you build the resiliency. And so play is so important to children. That's how they learn. Play is the work of a child. There's Article 31 in the United Nations, it's their little rule thing, and it has every child has the right to play and leisure activities. It's actually a rule because play is how children assimilate experiences, knowledge, how they understand the world. I don't know if you guys know this, but usually preschoolers, once if experienced the loss of a loved one, might pretend to die, and they will do that over and over and over again. And I'll get calls from parents like, why is my child doing this? And I'll be like, that's perfectly normal. They will keep on doing this until they understand. And you don't even have to help them through it at this point. They're just playing what they feel, what they understand, and they'll play it over and over again until their little minds come to a conclusion. And so play is number one with kids. It's how they develop, it's how they learn, it's how they can cope through difficult experiences. So we use play as a teaching method. We use play to assess how a child is doing, assess their development, and then also to help them continue their development.
Are imaginary friends a form of play or a form of coping?
I think you'll have to ask a psychologist about that, but I've seen many kids have imaginary friends, and I don't think there was anything wrong with it. I think for me it stems from the creativeness of a child's mind. Yeah.
So you created books to help with hospital settings and kind of introducing it to a child.
Yeah.
What role do the books play? If it's not literally playing, but it's reading.
Yeah, so that's a form of play, and it's a way to engage children in this conversation, to help parents have that conversation with their children, and then use it as a tool to start asking your child what they understand about the hospital experience. And then you want to introduce these topics before a child actually has to go to the hospital.
How can we make those topics more engaging? How do you make a hospital setting seem fun?
No, you can do that. You can definitely do that. So
I'm talking about not associating pain with it. Because let's be honest, you can numb as much as you want. Some procedures will have some degree of
for
pain.
Sure. Yeah. So first is the whole hospital environment and learning. Even as adults, if I tell you to sit there and stay for hours reading a very boring book, you're not going to learn much. You're going to daydream, and you're going to make it fun, make it interesting. So this is how you teach kids anything, even like boundaries with their bodies and stranger danger and safety on the internet and all these things that kind of, have serious undertones. Make them into something fun. And so there are great books about this stuff. So you can read them with the kid, you can watch TV shows about it, you can role play, A lot of parents role play with stranger danger. What do you do when someone offers you cookies? You're like, no, stranger. And so kids learn very easily. And there was once a mom in the emergency room who said something to her kid, and I was like, oh, that's just brilliant. So the child had to have multiple pokes because we couldn't find her vein. And the mom was beautifully communicative with this child, and the child was like, Mom, it hurts. She was about 6 years old. She was like, it's so hard. And the mom turns to her and she goes, sometimes in life we have to do hard things. And the child was like, okay. And I bet you that sentence carried on with this girl and will carry on until adulthood. And every time she experiences some sort of pain, she's going to be like, but Mama said sometimes we have to do hard things. I say it to myself now. Like, I didn't want to speak in front of a room full of people, but sometimes we have to do hard things if we want to advocate for what we're passionate about. So.
Okay, so how can I support, I'm going to talk about myself right now because I have 3 boys who hate the dentist. Keep in mind, they've never had to fill a cavity or do anything. I was very,
Where does the hate come from?
I have no idea, but I was very diligent about making sure there's no cavities. They still to this day, and the eldest is 16, have a fear of going to the dentist.
So I was having this conversation last week with a woman from Qatar. And apparently schools there have field trips for students to go to the dentist as a group. So it's a fun day trip to the dentist, and they get free stuff, and the dentist tells them what they do, and they get to see all the tools and do little coloring books. And so they've already created these positive memories at the dentist way before they need to see a dentist. And I think, again, that's the pitfall, that we wait. As humans, we're reactive. We just wait for something to happen and then react. But we should be more aware that we should prepare for these scenarios.
But it's interesting that I have no idea where that came from.
It could be a friend. It could be something they saw on a TV show, you know? And that's a great opportunity for you to maybe talk to them about it. Like use a show or a book, and then, or play. How old is the youngest?
12.
12?
Yeah, so I think we're beyond play.
But what you can do is, I love hospital bingo. So you can cut up images of dentist stuff and play bingo using the dentist image. And then as you're playing, bring up that conversation, and you'll be surprised by how open they are to, like, he could be like, oh, dentist, yuck. You're like, yeah, definitely, but why? And then he's gonna be like, oh, because dentists rip out your teeth. Do they? I've never heard of that. Do you want to ask a dentist about that? No, I'm sure they do it. Okay, but can I ask? Yeah, sure. What else do dentists do? You know, they always stick needles into your mouth. Ooh, I bet there's a reason they do that. No, he's just a mean doctor. And, you know, so you start this conversation, and it opens the door to what the child is truly thinking. And get those misconceptions out and put the right information in.
Do you plan on having books about the dentist or any other topic?
Well, a lot of great resources exist. They exist, just not in Arabic. And this was, I had started with the idea of Arabic because I decided to go with English first. But books were a lot harder than I thought they would be, so I don't think I'd do more. But yeah, there are great resources. They just need to be translated.
Yeah, maybe you should consider having them in Arabic and in schools and.
Oh, and hey, we're working in schools. I just started with that Salasil, so they're available there. With schools, I was giving out copies all over to any school that accepted them, and encouraging them to have like a day where they talked about the hospital experience and just ask their questions, but I'm not there. And so I feel like they need help with those leading questions. They need help with understanding children's reactions to the topics. But until we get to a point where people are more on board, there's not much I can do.
Yeah. I want to switch to a more general kind of look at this. And I wanted to know, let's not talk about mental health illnesses, but more kind of challenges.
Sure.
What are the most common challenges children face?
Like generally, I notice children these days have a lot more anxiety than we did when we were kids. And we had stressors. Life was hard when we were young. I had like a teacher that was a bully, and I was happy as can be. Like that didn't matter. But kids right now, they're very sensitive. They're more aware of their emotions, which is a beautiful thing. But I feel like schoolwork is heavier for them now. So it's like a lot of worry about school and their future. They, with Instagram, they're hyper aware about how they look. So there's a lot of body dysmorphia, food disorders, like even depression with younger kids. They're a lot more susceptible, I feel like, to mental health issues now.
Where do parents fit into this?
So
let's be very honest.
It's scary how much parents can be the most amazing things that's ever happened to their kids. There's a study that came out, or studies actually, that a child having one trusting, reliable adult can buffer a child and give them enough resilience to withstand the toughest adverse life experiences, like the worst, whether it's poverty or war or just one adult, you know? And we're lucky to be in a community where people have cousins and aunts and uncles, and you know, we're all there for each other. But it's not quantity, it's the quality of that relationship. And so I always look at children here with their parents when they're in the hospital. And the child always seems to seek out the nanny and the caregiver for comfort. And so when the parent is there, they're like, I'm trying to comfort my child and he's not being comforted. I'm like, are you the source of comfort for this child at home? You have to, your relationship with a child is your relationship with anyone. The trust doesn't just come out of the sky. You have to build that trust, you have to build that love even with your own family members. And so what I suggest is for people to spend at least one evening or morning or afternoon a week with one of their children. So you build that relationship with each child individually. You do something you both enjoy. Don't parallel play, or you know, each one is doing their own activity. You want to work together. You want to have opportunities for conversation. So how was your week? Teach your child to reflect. That's such a skill. Like, what did you think was hard about your week? What did you enjoy? What do you think we should do next time? And then the child feels comfortable enough to come to the parent and tell them when there are these adverse experiences happening to them. And we'll seek the comfort from the parent. We'll trust the parent when the parent says, you're going to get surgery, but I'm going to be there for you. The child's going to believe that. And so he's going to be more receptive to the help we offer. But if the child doesn't have that connection with the parent, and then you're suddenly like, Maryam, come in and fix this situation, I'm like, how can I build a trust that isn't there with the parent, you know? Like, I have to, and I can sometimes take the place of the parent and build that trust quickly, but it's not going to replace that what the parent and the child have. And so I feel like sometimes in our society it makes me sad, because I see a lot of people have kids, and I'm not sure that all these people should be having kids. I see a lot of people having a lot of kids, and I don't think they should have as many kids. You need to know that a child is a lifelong obligation. And it's not just an obligation that you can throw money at. It's a relationship that you have to build, and you know, and it has to be loving and trusting, and there has to be a reciprocation of respect. I think that's an aspect that the new generation is learning, to respect their children and their choices. It doesn't mean that you let your child do whatever they want, but offer control, offer choices that they can make, and then explain why there are these rules, you know. A child is a human, a small human. They have all the emotions that we have. They'll remember things later on. So treat them with that respect, you know, and then they'll grow into the most amazing human beings when we offer them those kind of things.
I think there's a thin line between, so that goes back to how we're raising the kids.
Yeah.
Are we raising very sensitive kids? Or I feel like where is sensitive and where is strong and resilient, and
I always get that question.
It's very tough, because if you want my opinion personally, I see some parents that are way too soft with their kids. But then again, I could be wrong.
Oh, it's all perspective. Well, I always say in anything in life, go in between. Go in the, you know, don't do any extreme. Always choose the middle ground. But about raising children that are soft, I know a lot of parents, I don't know why, they're like, oh, my child, I was one of them. My mom always thought I would be kidnapped, like up till maybe last year. My mom was like, don't get into people's cars. I was like, Mama, why would I get into people's cars? I'm a grown adult. She was like, if they say come help, don't go help. I was like, okay. So I know that parents want the best for their kids by wanting them to harden. But then I ask you, what's wrong with having a world full of soft people? Wouldn't it be a nicer world to live in? We want We want people who care. I would love to have soft adults around me that care about each other, who don't want war, who know how to communicate, who are receptive to changes in your emotion, and I see these parents and they're like, especially with boys, they're like, be rough, yeah, do that, and the boy comes into like the playroom and he's like, I want a toy. I was like, what is this? What is he gonna grow up to be, a wrestler? Like, how is this gonna help him in his life? Yani, even with his future spouse, what is this gonna support? We want men that are in tune with their emotions. We want men who, and being soft and being in tune in your emotions doesn't mean you're weak. Softness doesn't equal weakness. Softness is strength. Softness is looking into the world that's full of corruptness and full of evil and full of hard people and saying, I will not let it make me different. And so gentle parenting has its advantages in that it creates softer individuals, because you've listened to them, you've given them control. They then go into the world without feeling like they need to fight for their rights and fight for their independence. But you don't want to go so soft where the child then maybe might make mistakes, or children actually want to feel like they have boundaries. And so everything you do, even as a parent, just choose the middle ground and you can't go wrong.
I have a very different point of view, but this is not a parenting.
No, share.
It's not a parenting session. So parents specifically, I want to say mothers. I'm not saying all mothers. There are a lot of amazing fathers as well. But generally here you find that mothers kind of deal with that situation more. And this also goes back to the point you said about spending time with kids. I find that the assumption is it's the mother who's going to be doing that, specifically for younger kids. Again, not all mothers, there are a lot of amazing fathers. But I feel there's a lot of pressure to be too many things. We have this kind of direction into you need to build your career and go be a go-getter and everything, and then you need to be there for your kids, and then you need to be doing all this and taking care of yourself all in the mix.
It's definitely not fair.
So it's not about fairness. I'm talking about, I know fair or not, with or without my husband's input, I will be wanting to do that as a choice.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to parents in general about how they can better support their kids during such, phases of anxiety or anything? I know we had last week or the week before someone who talked about she was very emotional about her daughter going through anxiety to the point where she could not go to school, and she doesn't know how to deal with it. So what advice would you give?
I would say role modeling. So children look at their parent, and that's where they get like a guideline for life. So you have parents who are so insecure about the way they look, like especially mothers, they'd be so critical about the way they look, and then they'd be like, my daughter doesn't like the way she looks, and my daughter has body dysmorphia, and my daughter, I don't know what to do about my daughter. I'm like, have you maybe considered how your self-talk is translating to her, how she sees the way you look at yourself, the little comments you make about yourself? And so that's where it's almost like the subconscious part, the role. It's not even an active role. I mean, if you're exhausted by life and being supermom, and you shouldn't. I mean, I think we put too much emphasis on how we look. This is the first time I've blown-dried my hair in quite a while, so I put an effort for you guys. But I don't think this society has the right standards about doing everything. And back then, women didn't work. And so that's why women took care of children. Now women work. The role and responsibility of being the caregiver should be equally distributed to both partners. But if we're talking like you want to do it all and you don't know how to support your kid, the basic thing you can do is be a good role model. Model self-care, how you take care of yourself. Model positive talk to yourself. Model making good, healthy choices. and make sure that your child observes you doing that, and that becomes the child's inner thoughts.
Interesting. That also applies too, because it's more common now to have single parents.
Yeah.
So same advice. It's I feel like how would you explain that kind of situation in a nicer way? Because it is not a nice situation to not have both parents there.
No.
That could be stressful on a child.
Yeah. So you want to know how someone would approach that?
Would
topic
approach that,
of,
yeah.
of divorce.
Divorce. Why do I not have another parent?
So, depending on the age of the child. So, if we're saying like preschoolers, there are great preschoolers and school. There are great books about it. And so, why I love books a lot is because the child gets to disengage from the character that this is someone else who's going through a similar experience. So it's not threatening. This is the bear going to the hospital, or this is another girl going to the hospital. But that character provides a model that shows the child what the experience is like and how they can behave, and maybe or how not to behave. And so they can travel with the character of the book and go through, if it's a divorce, the divorce, and how this character then came out better for it. And then you can sit down with your child and talk to them about it. And I think you'll be surprised by how much children can learn and are aware. I know a lot of parents are like, oh, we don't want to include our children because we want to protect them. Children are so aware. They know so much more than you give them credit for, even like toddlers. So it's always good to include them in everything.
Yeah. How do you take into account culture?
Culture, oh, that's a good question. It depends, because like maybe 100 years ago, every country had one specific culture. Now we have so much culture in just one place. And so I was in the hospital a couple of years ago, and I was holding a musical rattle for an infant, and a dad came into the play area, and he was like, "A'udhu billah, why are you playing music for this child?" I've never had that before. Like, it wasn't pop music, it was just like a lullaby. And he was like, "I'm gonna complain, and you should stop this right now." And so I tried to explain that, we use music as a developmental tool for this child. It's like, music is never an excuse. And so you have to be very sensitive to the different cultures. I had a child I was trying to connect with, and I was like, "Oh, do you like Harry Potter?" And the mom was like, "We don't believe in wizardry and magic." I was like, "That's not what I meant," but I can see how that's perceived. And so I think the one tool that will never fail you is being open, honest, and communicative. So you see what's in front of you, and you adapt to it. And so whether it's a very open and free society, or whether they're very reserved or religious, you just adapt to your situation. So I worked almost 2 or 3 years in Jahra Hospital. It was my first time working with Bedu culture and Badoon. I was intimidated, but it was the best experience. I didn't want to leave Jahra. It was amazing. I loved the culture. There were such a great people. I have so much respect for Badoon now too. There were doctors that were Badoon. No one's gonna have my back more than the Badu population. I mean, no one has. If anyone messes with me, I have like a pack of family ready to come for you. So and it was funny because I remember one of my colleagues didn't like it at all because they were so honest. So I went into this room, and it had there were 3 women laying on the bed, and one of them were like, "Hadariya, come." And I go, and she was like, "Intu al-hadar, mo hulween. You're not pretty. Why don't you wear makeup?" And so I remember just I loved their honesty. I'm such an honest person. I love it. I was like, you know what? We really should. I had a 10-year-old make fun of my eyeliner in the United States. It was such a humbling moment. But you adapt. You adapt to the culture. You can literally take anything and translate it into any culture.
Child life specialist is a new field, right?
No, it's not a new
field. Is
field.
it new here?
It's new. No, حتى في الكويت. It's
Really?
been about, I think, 30 plus years.
Where?
Yeah, but we don't have certified specialists. That's
Okay.
why.
Okay. So, what advice would you give to an aspiring child life specialist?
volunteer first. Because we have people who think this job is so fun and glamorous, and you get to play with kids and you get a paycheck. First of all, we're not paid well. You're gonna have to love this job. At any moment, you're gonna be covered in some sort of bodily fluid, or all, in one day. And then it's long hours, it's tough situations, it's stress, so you have to really love it. And I feel like a lot of people just sign up for the job and then are shocked and leave. So I think volunteer, learn about it, and then you can do the certification, work the job. If you still love it, then pursue your master's degree. I'm not on board with how Kuwait does things, which is bachelor's, master's, PhD, and then you have these young adults that have never worked a day in their life, terrified of the workplace, trying to find any reason not to continue their education. They're like, Mama, no, I need to study something else. I'm like, honey, you're good. Come back and work. And so study, work, build that, have a foundation where you can add your studies to, your education.
I would love to get questions from
Sure.
our guests, but I have one random question that I am very interested in.
Sure.
How soon can I talk to my kids about money?
As soon as you want. I
Really?
mean, seriously, yeah.
Would that not give them any kind of anxiety?
No, it
No?
depends on how you approach it. I mean, you can literally start with toddlers and little coins and teaching them to put it in the bank,
Okay.
Yeah.
So that won't be stressful for them to understand the concept of we need money to buy things.
No, so what you can do is if you want to teach them how to spend money and save money, you can give them an envelope with the full allowance you're going to give them. And then they collect that, and at the end of the month, a percentage of that goes to another envelope that's for big expenditures, and then a smaller envelope for those weekly expenditures, and then they get to save the money and understand, I'm saving this for something special. And so that teaches the child, I should keep my money for something worth it. And then maybe if they get old enough, you want to be like, do you want to start saving for, I don't know, a special camp you want to attend, or college, or something, a car. It's a nice way to start, making them feel responsible. There are some apps for investments for kids, and so there's this initiative in Kuwait, Bunky or something,
Yeah.
Bunky. Yeah, and so they're already very successfully teaching kids, how to earn money and use it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you all for coming. This was our last of the Wellness Diwaniya. If you're interested in the others, they are on YouTube. You can go back and look at them. So for now, please stick around. There's coffee, there are treats, and we would love to have a conversation with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for coming. That was